Hey everyone, what's up? This is Simon from the Ionic Academy, back with a new quick win, super interesting. Just laughing because I barely forgot to record my desktop and in the last seconds I hit it, so we're good for this video. Anyway, what we're gonna do today is we're gonna implement a role-based authentication with our Angular Ionic 4 routing. So this is a bit more complicated, so it might not be that quick, but it's definitely interesting. So let's dive into this. I've already created a blank new Ionic 4 application. We actually don't have to specify the type Angular, it's the default anyway. So then I went ahead and created 3 pages, which are login, admin, where we go. We can get rid of the home folder, of course. Admin dashboard, user dashboard, and login. We got an auth guard that we want to fill, and we got a service, which will be more like a dummy service in our case, because we don't want to have a real backend here. I will show you the things in the Ionic side and give you an idea how you could handle it with a real backend. And finally, you're gonna need the Ionic storage in order to store some data. Normally, this would be like a JSON Web Token or access key. In our case, it's like random data just to have something in place there. And then also, in order to use the Ionic storage module, go ahead and add it to the imports in your app module file for root, and then we're good. So here's our app currently. As I got rid of the home page, you can also get rid of the home routing and then replace this to go to the login page instead. We can actually leave the rest. Is this formatting it like I want to? Yes, it actually is. We will change this in a second, but for now, let's keep it like it is. And let's bring in a simple login page. Actually, I think you're not really interested in building a login page because that's going to be a very basic page. We got the header area, we got the content area with 2 Ion items that are both connected to an ng model user, the one, the email, and then the password. So nothing really that interesting. So let's implement the sign in here, but we actually will have most of the logic in our auth service that we will also add in a second. So let's close the things we don't need. And maybe let's head over to our authentication service. Right now we should see that yes, cannot match. Yeah, that makes sense. But if we go to the blank root, we should be at login. So there we go. Of course, to make this work on the login page, we're gonna have to have a user object, user, password, whatever, just some dummy data. Okay, the problem is now that we're not having a backend to make things easier, but maybe it's even not really making things easier as we have to fake a few things, but I still hope I can transport the idea of how things work. So the case is you make a login and an admin logs into your app, admin. The admin should, of course, see some admin stuff. Then the user is using the same app, logs in with user, and should see only the user stuff. So we're gonna have to make sure that the routing after the login goes either to one of those 2 directions. And also we wanna make sure that if we're, for example, hosting the app as a website, we cannot simply go to user/dashboard or admin/dashboard if we are A, not authenticated, and B, if we don't have the right role to access the pages. So we're gonna implement an auth guard to prevent these cases as well. And it isn't that easy because I actually don't know why it's not that easy. No, I will tell you in a second, but for now, let's do a bit of coding. So our authentication service will have a user, which will be of the type observable, so nothing special, and then also an auth state. And from the name, if you have used Firebase before, you might smell, is Simon looking at some Firebase code before doing the tutorials? Well, yes and no. So I've used Firebase and I noted that they also got the auth state to which you can subscribe, and that's why I enjoyed the idea of having it in here as well. You will see why we need both of them. So in the past, we only used, I think, one of them, so only the behavior subject. That means we sign in. we extract the data from the credentials, so the password and the email which is stored in here. And normally you would then send it to the backend and get back a JSON web token or whatever information. In our case, we will check if the email is admin and password admin or if it is user. So in the one case, we have a role then admin and the second one role user. So normally, of course, both your JSON web token should reflect the roles. So if you make a request, the backend should know about the user roles or just the user ID and then do the other magic. Or it should also send the role to the front end so we know which elements, pages, whatever we can show to the user and admin based on the role. So as I said previously, or normally, we would then go ahead and use our authentication state. So the cool thing of a behavior subject is first we can pass in an initial value, which is actually a problem later on in our tutorial. And second, we can always get the value of the authentication state, and we can call next to emit a new value, just like an observable. And then other users can subscribe to the authentication state, or we will make it easier for them. So let's actually mark this as private, and then others can only access the user object, which is this authentication state as observable. Now we could also use a subject actually, which has no initial value but works basically the same. However, with a subject, the new emitted values are not used correctly for our guard later on. It's very theoretical, so I will skip this for now. Just keep in mind the behavior subject has an initial value. You can get an observable from it. You could also at any point get the value from the behavior subject, which can of course change as it's in general an observable to which we can emit new values. So we're emitting a new value, and at this point I might also use the storage, because normally if you make a login, you would store the storage. You would store, as I said, the JSON web token or any other cookie that you might want to save. So this .storage set for a specific key, and I like to keep this up here. So let's call this one token key, and that's whatever user access token. Okay, name doesn't really matter. Just make sure that you can set and get it with this constant, which makes life a bit easier. So, and also, this is the object we pass around with our authentication state. So we are later able to immediately get the role in our authentication guard. So we already think a few steps ahead. And also, normally you return, in this case, an observable of the type any, because you will make an HTTP request. So return HTTP post to your login path, and this would return an observable. So we want to be as close as possible to the reality. Therefore, let's return an observable as well by using auth, and then the user object, which makes basically this object into an observable that is returned. And now the login page can simply call our authentication service if we inject it in here. So auth service this.auth, sign in this.user, and then we already get the author completion to an observable simply because we have declared the return type, or the TypeScript already noticed what return type this would be. So let's see. After login, we got a user, hopefully. We will also skip the error handling in this case for the login. So I'm pretty sure you know how to show an alert once the login fails. So let's say we log in with user auth, sign in is not a function. Is that right? I don't think so. So please Ionic serve, let's refresh. So up until this point, we've only created a basic login. function to call our authentication service, and an authentication service that makes a dummy check against some credentials, emits a new value to an authentication state, so we have some reference that the user is now logged in, and stores the token locally. That's all we currently have. Is it already working again? No, of course not. In that case, maybe let's just do already some of the parts that are not really interesting at all, which are the admin and the user dashboard. So we're gonna go, let me copy this to the admin dashboard HTML, and then put in whatever you got. Maybe use a different color for the admin dashboard and the user dashboard, so we see that we're logged into different pages. And then, oopsie doopsie, coming in the wrong window, of course, in the admin page, simply use the authentication service signout that we actually haven't implemented yet. So let me just do it like this for now, and then use the same values you had in the admin dashboard for the user dashboard as well. User dashboard, let's use primary in here, and the sign out basically the same like here, because we don't want to do anything specific in there. Of course, that's always the wrong import. It's the second. There we go. Why are you complaining? What do you not like? I don't know. Should be fine. So let's see. As you can see, we don't see anything. Come on, what is going on? Cannot find. Oh, sweet Jesus, did I really type this? Crazy import going on. Okay, so now we're fine. And the part we just did on the admin dashboard and user dashboard is not yet visible. We can navigate to the pages, but here's what happens if we use user, and log in. So after the user, we get back this object. If we do it with admin, we get back the admin object. So this means we can now, inside our login, see which role a user has and then guide him to the right page. So let's do this. We can import the private router from Angular, and make sure that you type it private, not pirate. It's no pirate, it's a router. And then use the router to navigate to whatever page. So we got admin dashboard, and we got also user dashboard. And we want to navigate to the admin only if perhaps we also extract the role, which is in user role, as we have seen right here. So then if the role is equal to admin, we're gonna move the user to the admin dashboard, navigate by URL, and then else if role equals user, in that case we're gonna go to the user dashboard. Okay, so now we have implemented the basic functionality for the separation between an admin and the user login. So we go ahead, user, and we're on the user dashboard. We can log out, which actually has no functionality yet, and we can go back to the login, and we can log in as an admin, and we should see that we're already on a different page. Okay, this is cool. The problem is now, let's go back to the login. Okay, if I go ahead as a user, I'm logged in, and I go to the admin dashboard, I'm immediately on the dashboard of the admin as well. And of course, that is not correct. So even if we now go ahead and implement the sign out, which we can do, because that's just, let's use async, and then we're gonna remove the token key, we're gonna set it to nullback, and we move back to the login. Actually, haven't used the router yet. The Angular router, of course. Even if we use something like this, we're not able to prevent the access, because right now we're logged in, we log out, we come back to here, and then we go ahead with the admin admin dashboard, and there's no check on the route to see if a user is allowed, either has the access token or the role. So now we can continue with our authentication guard. And for the authentication guard, we can implements can activate. Is there some code I genuinely think that this is not where it should come from. This should definitely simply be from an Angular router and not all of this. And now we can implement the can activate. This could actually have a lot of values, and normally I think Angular already puts it into it, but right now I don't see it, so no problem. Not assignable to can activate. Oh, sweet Jesus, what is wrong with you? I really don't know. Implements can activate. Maybe I did miss something. Maybe I need to return anything. Yeah. Okay, that was the problem. So what we want to do, perhaps you've seen the auth guard in action as well already, is apply this guard to our routes that we want to protect. So you can simply go ahead and add a new block, can activate on the routes that you want to protect, and then add the auth guard. And also do the same for the user dashboard. So now whenever somebody's trying to access this page or this page, the authentication guard will check if the user is allowed to access that page. In our case, with returning false, what happens is that all access to those pages will be immediately denied. And as we got no redirect, this is just really bad code, which of course is not working for a reason. Private router again, using the router. So this dot router, actually we're gonna use parse URL. I will tell you something about this in a second. So we're gonna, can we return this actually? I think that should work as well. So the parse URL will actually parse the string into a URL tree, which basically replaces the whole navigation state of our application, which means if something else is going on, we will just be brought back to the login page. So if we now go ahead to the user dashboard, back to here, and admin dashboard the same, it's like returning false and then going to the login, but this works in one go. All right, but of course we don't always want to prevent access to that page. We want to ask our private auth service if the user might perhaps be allowed to access that page. So therefore we go ahead and we're gonna return this dot auth, and now we're gonna use the user observable and do a little pipe blob to change something. So first of all, we only want to take one result. We don't want to be subscribed after this first result. So can I get the auto import? Nope, not today. RxJS operators. Actually, if my eyes are a bit red, I had to cut the onions today, so I really have some problems with my eyes. I hope I still see everything, but I'm sorry if I miss something. It really hurts. Anyhow, so we take the result of the user and we map this. So let's just, I think, can you do the auto import, please? Let's just do a login here. User, I don't want to be too fast with whatever, so I will try to add more steps to my videos so you see what's going on without me typing for 15 minutes. So if we now go to the admin dashboard, for example, we see that we don't have a user. Let's log in as whatever, admin. What is happening right now is we're actually trying to log in, but this is still preventing us from going to that route. But now we would have the right role. So that means if we got a user at this point, we shouldn't go to the login. This should only be done in the else block. And if we don't have a user, we might also want to show a little alert. So I want to go ahead with the alert controller. Makes sense to show your users what is going on. So just add a little block below for a little alert, and then call it if the user is not authenticated to see this path. Otherwise, let's return true. This will not yet fix our final problem, but this will first of all re-enable our navigation so far. So if we go now to admin, we are able to access the admin. If we now refresh the page, we would expect the user to be still logged in, which he is not. The problem is we have written the information to the, where we go, application, the local storage. No, of course not, we're in the indexed DB. Here's the user access total. So the information we stored is right, but we're not loading the information yet. So to make sure that even if the user refreshes the page, you're gonna have to implement something that is loading the user right in the beginning. So let's add a new function to load the user, and let's call this .load user right in the beginning. And then we go ahead, or we'll just bring this in. So we get the token from the storage as always. And if the token exists and holds those two values, it's important because we otherwise add a fake information here. Actually, I don't think that's important. I don't think we need this. Let's get rid of it. If it's not working, please remind me in a few minutes that I removed code that was essential. So if we find the data in the storage, we can tell our authentication state, just like we did with the login, about this information. As I said, normally this would be a JSON web token or some access token. And otherwise, I will not return null because of a reason that I will tell you in a few seconds. So we return this empty object that we can check against. So now in the beginning, the app loads. Let's try to go to the admin dashboard, which is still not possible. And why is this not possible? Because for some reason we're still null. So even if we get the data at this point, loaded user, we're right now not able to get this direct routing to a page. The reason is that our observable, there's the loaded user. No, that wasn't the case. So let's go there with the URL, and we see the loaded user appears after this log. So what happens is that the auth guard strikes even before the user is loaded, simply because we're using a behavior subject that has an initial value of null. And that is the problem here. And in order to overcome this problem, we're gonna add a little pipe block to the observable that is created here and use filter, import the filter, response. What the filter does with this expression is it will only return expressions that are not null. So that means our first emitted value, which is null, won't be transmitted. So the auth guard is still waiting for a response. The load user strikes and returns our data, and then the authentication guard can use that data. I know our XJS logic and all of this is a bit scary to many of you, but I tried to get close to this part as slowly as possible. So let's see what happens now. We go to the admin dashboard, we don't see the null log anymore because the loaded user appears, and this is the first value that is emitted to our behavior subject and therefore to the user observable. So now we are finally able to immediately go to this page. The last thing that is now missing is that everyone can still access the other routes, even, and that sounds like German, other routes. Even though we're authenticated and have the role and everything. So now we're gonna add a bit more information to our app routing. And I don't know how long this video is, 25, Jesus Christ. We have to hurry up because I think my recording always crashed at 30 minutes. So let's do this. We're gonna add a new frank data block in which we're gonna say to access this route, you're gonna have this route. You're gonna have the role admin, and for this one, you're gonna be a user. Of course, this doesn't mean it right now, but we're able to access this data object in our Authentication Guard. And let's go here. If we got the user, or maybe let's just even do it before, expected role equals route.data.role. And then we kind of go ahead with lock expected role. And then we can implement it in here as well. Actually, I was way too scared that we would reach 30 minutes with this quick win. So I had to make a little cut, and now we're safe and can focus on the rest. So with this part, we now get the expected role whenever we try to access the page. So let's see how this looks in reality. We go to the user dashboard and we expect the role to be user. Now we just need to make a little check in here to get the role of the user, which is user role, of course. And then if the expected role is equal to the role, we're gonna return true. And otherwise, guess what? We will simply copy the block from before, which is kind of, I think we could have done this in one place, but let's just keep it like it is. So we try to navigate to the user dashboard, and of course we can now talk about that the user admin. We can talk about that even if we're logged in as an admin, we should have the permissions to go to the user dashboard, but of course that can be simply implemented in here. But if we now go to the admin dashboard, we see that we expect the admin, we are a loaded user of admin, so we can go there. Let's log out. Let's try to be a user now. User, expected user, and I can also refresh that page. I will stay here, and if I try to access the admin dashboard, I will be brought back to the login. And again, of course, we might also throw the user back to his own dashboard or something like this, but this was just an example for the case. So with our role guard and also the authentication guard logic, we're now able to directly go to a specific page. And now at the end, I want to tell you why we did all of these complicated things and not just use the authentication state. So previously, and with Firebase tutorials, many times we used something like whatever authentication state, subscribe, user, and if we got a user, we will then navigate to dashboard. Okay, that's sweet Jesus, that's like the worst code ever, but I think it should make things a bit more clear. And otherwise, we will navigate to login or something like this. The problem with this code is simply that once you run this code, or you have this code in place at the top of your application, always when your application loads, so which means a user tries to load admin dashboard, the code will strike. The user is null in the beginning, so we're on login, we got this little flash of content, and then we suddenly get the token from the storage, and then we are brought to the dashboard. Now, what if the user doesn't want to access the dashboard, but wants to access like user contacts or another page of your application? The same thing would happen, and the user would always be brought to the dashboard. So therefore, this code was very inflexible and would always bring the user to one specific page in the inside area. With our current logic, we are just making sure that the pages are protected with this can activate route. Then in the authentication guard, we're subscribed to an observable, which waits for the first real value of load user. That's also the reason why we return this fake object and not null, because if we would return null here, this would be filtered out right there. And then we're able to get all the important information. So I really hope you enjoyed this quick win. I think we're close around 30 minutes. I'm sorry for that, but this complex, or this topic is a bit tricky, especially with our XJS stuff and the filter functionality, the pipes that we have applied to the different routes. I hope you enjoyed this and learned something. If you did, please leave a nice comment, give it an upvote, and also make sure to subscribe. And then, of course, I wish you a great coding day, and I'll catch you inside the next video.